If there's one thing Rezero makes crystal clear from the very first episode, it's that Natsuki Subaru is going to suffer a lot. Return by Death is probably the worst ability one could ask for in a fantasy world, but it is also the only reason he's still alive. Every single time Subaru dies, it's a failed puzzle piece that forces him to adapt and slowly reveal the hidden secrets of this world. So today we're going to look at every single time Subaru died in Rezero, including the deaths that were cut from the anime. Let's begin. The first death we see in the anime happens when Subaru just arrived at the capital. He has no magic, no combat training, and absolutely no idea how this world operates. After meeting Emilia, he tracks down her stolen insignia to a rundown loot house in the slums. He enters the building completely blind, discovering the corpse of an old man in the darkness. Elsa, the bowel hunter, simply slices his stomach completely open. As he bleeds out on the floor, choking on his own blood, Emilia arrives only to be struck down beside him. He dies holding her hand, completely unaware of who killed him or why. Subaru then returns by death and quickly realizes that he has a save point mechanic and decides to bypass the attack entirely. He rushes back to the loot house, attempting to buy the stolen insignia directly from Felt before Emilia ever shows up. The problem is that Elsa then arrives, posing as the original client. Subaru ends up winning the bid but accidentally exposes the fact that he's working with Emilia. Elsa didn't take too kindly to this and decides to kill Rom and Felt. Now, unlike when he was first killed by Elsa, he actually sees the attack coming this time around and attempts to defend himself. This death is very important because it shatters Subaru's illusion that simply knowing the future makes him invincible. Subaru then respawns once again because obviously he's returning by death, and at this point the pain and confusion is starting to take its toll. He genuinely believes that he's caught in some video game tutorial and that his previous deaths were just him failing to find the correct route. He then rushes into the slums and runs headfirst into the 3 alleyway thugs from before. One of the thugs panics, draws a hidden dirty knife and stabs him in the back. As he bleeds out, once again he starts to realize that this isn't a video game. There's no epic boss fight and no magical villain for him to face. He dies face down in a filthy alleyway, bleeding out from a mundane stab wound delivered by a nameless mugger. That then strips away the last of his isekai fantasies. He comes to the realization that he's weak, vulnerable, and the world does not care about him. Enter Chapter 2, where Subaru has survived the capital, secured a job as a butler in the Roswaal mansion, and is actively trying to earn his keep. During a seamlessly harmless supply run to a nearby village, he plays with the local children and is briefly bitten by a small puppy. That puppy is actually a disguised maw beast, and the bite acts as a trigger for a lethal curse. Subaru returns to the mansion completely unaware that a magical death sentence has been stamped onto his gate. Exhausted from his butler duties, he goes to sleep and the curse activates in the dead of night. He simply passes away in his sleep without a drop of blood spilled. He wakes up days in the past, completely disoriented. This death introduces a new mechanic per se. If he can be killed without ever being attacked, then nowhere is truly safe and everyone is a suspect. Death number 5 is where the paranoia starts to seep in. Desperate to avoid whatever invisible force killed him in his sleep, he refuses to complete his butler duties. He isolates himself as a guest in his room, determined to stay awake and survive the night of the curse. The curse still triggers, of course, but because Subaru is awake, it manifests as an illness. Nauseous and in agonizing pain, he drags himself out of his room into the dark hallway to vomit. But the curse has another effect. It causes his body to exude an overwhelming stench of the witch's miasma. Rem, who has a deep-seated, trauma-induced hatred of the witch cult, smells this miasma peeking, so she ambushes him in the hallway. Before Subaru can even process the attack, Rem sends him flying with a single swing of her weapon. Death number 6 is driven entirely by Subaru's fear and a desperate need for answers. Subaru leaves the mansion entirely. He sets up a camp on a nearby cliff overlooking the property, armed with a knife and planning to spy on the mansion to see exactly who comes to kill him. He doesn't realize that his very presence, combined with the lingering stench of the witch that's on him, makes him look exactly like a member of the witch's cult. Rem tracks him down into the forest, but she doesn't kill him. She does damage him severely, but she also uses water magic to heal him, just enough to keep him conscious while she questions him. The physical pain that he endures is only matched by the realization that Rem truly hates him. Ram then steps in, off-screen of course, and sends a wind blade flying directly into Subaru's throat, killing him instantly as a twisted form of mercy. He then wakes up once again and finally manages to survive the week. He works himself to the bone, builds rapport with the mansion's residents, and successfully avoids his own assassination. But in his tunnel vision to save himself, he misses something important. He wakes up to find that Rem died in her sleep. Ram, of course, utterly devastated by the loss of her sister, completely loses her mind and blames Subaru, and also tries to kill him. Subaru realizes that he's trapped in an unwinnable situation. He cannot talk down a grieving Ram and he cannot bring Rem back to life. But he also realizes something else. He still has a window to fix this, but only if he dies right now. For the first time, he weaponizes his own curse. He sprints away from Ram, reaches the edge of a massive cliff and throws himself off. This of course is a massive turning point. He stops viewing Return by Death as a punishment and instead starts to use it as a tactical reset button. Now as for death number 8, Subaru makes a massive mistake by fighting with Emilia and staying behind in the capital. When he finally gets a bad feeling and returns to the Roswaal mansion, he arrives to a massacre. The village is wiped out and Rem is dead. He then wanders into the mansion, completely numb, only to find Emilia's corpse. Her passing breaks her contract with Puck, causing the spirit to transform into his true form, the Beast of the End. The sheer mana emitting from Puck's body plummets the temperature of the entire world to absolute zero. Subaru is then flash frozen where he stands. Now Subaru then loops once again, of course, and attempts to rush Rem back to the mansion to intercept the attack. They are ambushed on the road by the witch cult led by the Archbishop of Slot, Petalgoose. Rem is once again killed and has her body twisted into a pretzel. Broken and carrying Rem's lifeless corpse, Subaru marches through the snow to the mansion. He walks right back into the exact same problem. The mansion has fallen, Emilia is dead, and Puck is already transformed into the Beast of the End. Disgusted by Subaru's failure to protect Emilia once again, he actively freezes Subaru to death as a direct punishment. Pushed to the absolute brink of insanity, Subaru decides that he cannot play by the rules anymore. He decides that the only way to force Emilia to evacuate the mansion is to tell her the truth. He sits her down and attempts to force the words "Return by Death" out of his mouth, fully expecting the Witch of Envy to crush his heart as a penalty, just as she has threatened every time before. The problem is that the witch doesn't punish Subaru, she punishes Emilia. She phased into Emilia's chest and crushed her heart instead of his. Emilia then dies on the spot, in his arms. Beatrice, horrified by the event, teleports Subaru out of the mansion as a way to save him. Petalgoose mocks him, but the Beast of the End emerges from the forest, immediately killing Petalgoose. Puck then once again turns his attention to Subaru and freezes him to death for a third time. This time, Subaru finally gets the timeline right. He rallies an army, successfully secures an alliance, and intercepts the witch cult and defeats Petalgoose. The raid was a total victory, but Petalgoose had one final trick. As he dies physically, his spirit leaves out and forcibly possesses Subaru, taking full control of his body. Subaru manages to claw his way to the surface and his own mind for just a few seconds. He realizes that he cannot purge Petalgoose, and if he stays alive, he will try to use his body to murder Emilia. Subaru then begs Julius and Ferris to end his own life. Ferris reluctantly applies a lethal dose of water magic, disrupting Subaru's nervous system, thus paralyzing him. Julius then steps forward, and with tears in his eyes brings down his sword, cleanly slicing through Subaru. This is the first time he has asked his friends to kill him, trading his life to secure a victory he won't get to see. Subaru wakes up after the battle with the white whale expecting a clean victory, but he quickly discovers his new reality. Rem's name and memories have been eaten by the Archbishop of Gluttony. She's trapped in a comatose state and nobody in the world, except for Subaru, remembers that she exists. Without a second of hesitation, Subaru grabs a nearby dagger and plunges it directly into his own throat. He bleeds out on the floor, fully expecting to reset the timeline to a point before the attack of Gluttony. But when he wakes up, the checkpoint has been updated. Rem's fate is sealed. This is when he finally has to come to terms with the fact that his checkpoints are completely out of his control and any mistake could become permanent. In the next loop, Subaru leaves the newly discovered sanctuary to return to the Roswaal mansion, intending to check on the maids. He opens the door to a darkened mansion and is instantly met with a blast of force. Elsa is there waiting for him, and of course she kills him again by slicing his stomach completely open. Death number 14 happens when Subaru returns to the sanctuary, only to find the entire village completely abandoned and covered in a heavy snowstorm. Looking for survivors, he wanders towards the tomb. He encounters a single tiny, seemingly harmless white rabbit and reaches out to it. The rabbit then instantly lunges and bites off his finger. Within seconds, a massive swarm of thousands of rabbits start to surround him. These of course are not normal animals. It's actually a starving maw-beast entity. They then start to swarm over Subaru. They don't just bite his skin. They burrow into his body, they crawl up his extremities, tear through his muscle tissue and consume his internal organs while he's fully conscious. The sheer sensory overload of over 1,000 tiny jaws chewing through his nervous system from the inside out makes this arguably the most physically painful death Subaru has ever endured. He dies screaming in the snow, literally consumed alive. Now after his encounter with Echidna, and upon returning to the real world, Subaru finds himself enveloped in an overwhelming darkness. He's on the brink of being consumed by the shadows when Garfield intervenes and saves him. Pristella then catches up to them and consumes Subaru, forcing him to end himself in order to break free from her shadows and prevent himself from succumbing to insanity. Subaru then decides to adjust his tactics. As Subaru finally breaches the library, expecting to find safety in Beatrice's pocket dimension, Elsa also enters the room behind him. She once again kills him on the spot, leaving Beatrice shocked standing over his body. Subaru then returns once again, only to find out that Roswaal knows about his looping powers. Roswaal manually creates a dead-end timeline per se by personally murdering Garfield and Ram, throwing the sanctuary into chaos just as the Great Rabbit swarm breaches the compound. Subaru is of course attacked by the rabbits once again. He does manage to drag his mutilated body back to Echidna's tomb to find Emilia, but Emilia's mind has completely shattered. The stress of the trials and the isolation have broken her. She leans forward and passionately kisses him, whispering twisted words of affection. We then finally get to the bustling Watergate city of Pristella. Around a year, 12 months of relative peace is instantly shattered when the witch cult launches an attack on the city. Mr. Subaru, of course, rushes to the central plaza to find Sirius, the Archbishop of Wrath, holding a young boy named Luzbel hostage at the very top of the clock tower. Sirius uses the authority of Wrath to forcibly synchronize the physical body of everyone in her vicinity. Sirius then drops the boy from the tower and the blunt force trauma is transferred to everyone in the area, including Subaru, and he dies instantly. He then respawns once again, of course, and then sprints back to the plaza, determined to stop Sirius before anything happens. But as per usual, he misunderstood the true danger of the authority of Wrath. As he tries to rescue the hostage, the sheer paralyzing fear is also broadcasted into his brain. Sirius then shows up, wraps her chain around his neck and throws him off the ledge. His fingers are severed and he's simply left hanging, slowly suffocating and bleeding to death. He then returns once again but understands that he can't fight her alone, so he summons Reinhard Van Astrea, the Sword Saint and the single most powerful entity in this universe. He blitzes the plaza faster than the eye can see, and in the end was able to cut through Sirius, but the Authority of Wrath is still active. The fatal physical damage inflicted upon the Archbishop is instantly transferred to every living soul nearby. The next one happens in the Agria Sand Dunes. They almost get away using Melee's powers, but one of the Earth Dragons got irritated and let out a loud roar, which woke up all the Witch Beasts. Emilia and Julius do their best to ward them off, but their numbers just continue to grow. Beatrice and Melee chip in as well to reduce their numbers, and when it seemed as if they made it through, a bright light from the tower blows off Subaru's head. By the way, in the web novel, the bright light made its appearance long before this, when they first entered the sand dunes. It was used to destroy the ice pillars Emilia left behind to track their movements without them knowing. With that said, Subaru of course returned by death, just moments before the Earth Dragon alerted the bears. Though before Subaru could make any changes or do anything about it, the events of his previous life played out just the same, with a few minor differences. This time they decide to not run straight towards the tower, but the sandworm being destroyed and collapsing near the group caused them to be separated, and knocked Betty and Subaru off Patresh. This of course then led to Subaru being sniped once again, first through the abdomen and then through his chest, which this time also pierced Betty, who knelt over his body crying. After falling through the cracks of the space distortion, they arrive at a fork in the road and decide to take the right path. Now the anime kinda speeds through this decision, but the novels go into much heavier detail here. In the web novel, the group immediately had this ominous, sickening feeling about this route, while in the light novel, there was no such warning as it was in the anime. They simply venture forward and encounter massive, giant iron walls blocking their way. Iridna and Ram recognize them as mere clumps of iron, but Subaru instinctively sees them as doors. When he touches them, they completely vanish. This works for the first 3 doors, but when he touches the 4th one, nothing happens. And because they were stalled here, the overwhelming density of the witch's miasma begins to seep into their minds, completely twisting their sanity. This then leads to a brutal loop where the group ends up violently turning on each other, and Patresh literally eats Ram and Subaru. There's also another massive cut that was made as well, and this time it's an entire death loop. In the web novel, Subaru initially stumbled upon the Horse King by himself after falling through the sand and suffered a gruesome death by being burnt alive. It's very descriptive and portrayed as one of the most painful deaths he has ever suffered. Now after Subaru lost his memory for some unknown reason, he wanders into the massive staircase of the Watchtower. He's then pushed from behind by someone and of course falls to his death. He then wakes up once again, and this time it's a bit different because this Subaru knows nothing about his powers and the amount of times he has died before. He also can't trust his friends because he misunderstood a convo between them, along with the fact that he doesn't really know them. Now he does end up getting pushed off the staircase once again, but this time it's way more gruesome. Unlike the first time where he simply falls straight down and dies on impact, his body pretty much ping-pongs across the staircase all the way down. He then returns by death once again, and this time he panics and runs away. The pain was simply too much for this newbie Subaru. He goes outside hoping that something would kill him, but he ends up falling into the dungeons below him. He then somehow gets teleported back to the tower where he discovers the dead bodies of most his friends. And just before he's consumed by whatever entity responsible for the attack, he's once again saved by Patresh, only to then have his head cut off by a shadowy figure that somehow knows about his powers to return by death. With that said, those are all the deaths in Rezero so far, and of course season 4 is still ongoing, so we might have a few more before the season ends, and I might just do a different video later on, we'll see. But yeah, if you guys loved it, drop a like. If you're new, subscribe, and also check out my video explaining the Pleiades Watchtower and the entire events of season 4. That video should be on screen.